Hello everyone, welcome back to again on my YouTube channels and on Facebook. To the front of you, I have sitting here again for sharing our story from the book of 10th class, and that book name is here Port Pinch Without Page. Which topic about today? The beyond of you, I have to discuss that topic name is here a trip of surgery. It is very important chapter from the book of 10th class. The student who is in 10th class, first of all, I would like to take to you all my dear student, you must watch this video concept. As far as this video concept will be exposed by me, you keep on watching, and after watching of that you also meditate so many sentences inside of our minds, and you try to share also that kinds of sentences among of our friends, amongst of those who is understanding to very best English with them. You whole time keep on sharing. If you will be sharing like these sentences with each another in English to English, you will feel to very comfort the back for talking, the back for gossiping, the back for making interaction. You will not get of any hassle in your life, and you will not muddle while speaking if you will be contributing to different kinds of sentences among of anybody then. And if you're not thinking about of any kinds of sentences in English to English, and if you want to speak instantly the front of anyone, then really at that moment you will be formal. So just I am saying to you, you will have to practice too much for talking, and you will have to share every day different kinds of the sentences with each another. If you have some confusion for telling of any kinds of the sentences, then I am telling to you all my dear student, you try to think to lots of the sentences about of your daily work, which you keep on doing in your daily life about that sentences. You try to think inside of the minds, and after thinking that also you see to speaking how many sentences are we able to speak. Like this meter, you will have to ponder. If you will ponder that kinds of the meter, then sure I am telling to you, really you will feel to very cozy the back for talking. And if you will be able to talk all those sentences about of the daily work with friends, with teacher, then really you will feel to very comfortable for talking of different kinds of the thing the front of anyone. One thing more I am wanting to tell to you, the back for talking. What is English points for talking about of that English point I am going to have to you. If you are wanting to speak to very quickly, then you will have to think of those all kinds of the concept inside of the mind to very quickly, and you will have to have of that different kinds of the sentences the front of those who is listening or for speaking. If you think to very quickly of any kinds of the thing, automatically from our minds all of the sentences will come out to being very correct. And if you will not think to very fastly, then our speaking will not become to so flat, and you will feel to observe that means there is some hesitation in my speaking. Like this meter, you will not have to bring up inside of the mind. If you think of that means my speaking is not so well, my speaking is like of dead duck, then sure I am telling to you, really our speaking will become like of hogwash. There is not of any hard nut the back of English speaking. What is hard nut? Hard nut is very complicated word. If you are thinking about of anything about that is hard nut, then really that will be made hard nut in our life, and you will not be able to make too easy of that. For making easy, you will have to practice, you will have to struggle, you will have to continue practice for the back of those which you are wanting to achieve in your life. Now just I am going on the topic, which topic about I have to have the beyond of you, and which a message I have given of you at the beginning of this video. You must follow in your daily life, and you keep on speaking English to English with each another. What is the topic of beyond all of you? The topic is here a trip of surgery. It is very important chapter from the book of 10th class. First of all of you have to understand here what is the meaning of a trip of surgery. A triumph is, what do you understand? A victory of surgery. Surgery means treatment, which you can say from the other way. Means the victory of, whether you can say also that the winning of treatment. In this story, there are three characters. First is here Mrs. Pemprey and Mrs. Pemprey's dog, that name is here Tricky, and in third there is coming Mr. Harriet. Mr. Harriet is in this story a veterinary, and also he is explainer, means he is narrator like. Who is coming here? Mrs. Pemprey. About of her, all of you have need to understand. Mrs. Pemprey is the owners of Tricky. Tricky is a small dog and he is coming in category of greyhound. Mrs. Pemprey is a rich lady and she keeps a dog and that dog name is here Tricky. Tricky and Mrs. Pemprey both are loving to each another very much. Means Mrs. Pemprey is pampering very much of Tricky. Whole time Mrs. Pemprey pamper of Tricky and always she wishes to feed different kinds of the food as cod liver, cream, cake, chocolate, eggs, wine. These all full filled of nutritions. It is given Tricky for eating, for making body. And eating of the sort of the things Tricky had been very hugely fat. When Tricky had been hugely fat, then he started to suffer from different kinds of problem. Also, you can say that Tricky was suffering from malnutrition. And why was he suffering from malnutrition? About that, just I am going to tell you. If anybody who is eating too so much nutrition things and if they are not using of that energy, if they are not using of that energy, the back for doing of any things, then really in our body there is fluid so much in nutritions and that nutritions start to convert into malnutritions. And in our body, it start to become so different kinds of the problem and we are involved in different kinds of the complications. Just like that, it has happened with Tricky. He was eating all of those nutrition things and he was walking little bit the back of Mrs. Pemprey. His eyes was looking like a bloodshot, whole parts of the body it was looking like a rheumy and his whole parts of the muscles was lolled down. Each corner of the muscle also it was lolled down. Means actually Tricky's feet it was not looking where is the feet of Tricky. Means when he was going at that time he was looking like of tottering. Means he is tottering like. Means he was looking like of tottering. Means he is not going. Means he is sliding. He is toppling like that he was looking while going. One day Tricky was wandering with his mistress in the street and when Mrs. Pemprey was wandering the street in early morning in the same time Mr. Harriet names persons means which I have told of you at the beginning of this video, he was a veterinary and also he is like of a writer. He was crossing by his car in the same street in which street Mrs. Pemprey and Tricky both were walking. And while walking times, Mrs. Pemprey and Tricky both were taking little bit exercise. And they both were feeling some better. But at that moment, just Mr. Harriet was crossing by his car and he saw the appearance of Tricky. Just he shocked, just he abacked looking the scene of Tricky and he says to himself that my God, what am I looking? What happened of this dog condition? I think he must be suffering from malnutrition. So just he thought of that, being a doctor, I should advise the mistress of this Tricky, and he stopped off his car on the same place. At the stage, he stopped off his car, he came out to opening of his car chamber and he's going the back of Mrs. Pemprey and he is giving the voice, hello ma'am, please stay. After that Mrs. Pemprey just she stopped on the same place and Mrs. Pemprey is looking the way of Mr. Harriet and just Mrs. Pemprey is telling to Mr. Harriet, what is the matter? What is the matter? Just Mr. Harriet is telling there is not any kinds of the meter, but I have stopped here for telling of you something. But if I will say of you and if you follow, then I will say. Just Mr. Harriet is telling to Mrs. Pampley, I am telling you actually Tricky is suffering from malnutrition actually in the body of Tricky. Really there is not nutrition, there is not looking like of energy. I am telling you, you will have to do something for improving the health system of Tricky. If you will exactly follow of my given advice, then sure Tricky will be recovered. And if you will not follow of my advice, then I am telling you within few days Tricky will be fallen seriously ill, and that day you will repent very much. Just Mrs. Pampley is telling, let's tell me that what have I to do for my Tricky. I will follow that and I will do that. Just now Mr. Harriet is telling you will have to cut down of his food. You will have to cut down which kinds of the food, means you will have to cut down some sweet things and some nutrition things. If you give to any sweet things for nutrition thing, the really Tricky will become more and more sickness. So sweet things or nutrition things you will have to cut down for few days for improving the health system of Tricky. Mrs. Pampley is just listening of this advice, and she is telling that if I will cut down these kinds of the food, then really my Tricky will start to suffer from malnutrition. Now I can't believe this matter, means my Tricky is suffering from any malnutrition. My Tricky is not suffering from malnutrition. I can't believe of this matter. If I will cut down of these kinds of the food, then from where energy will come in the body of my Tricky. So I can't cut it. And also Tricky was just like that. Tricky was not wanting to avoid to eat such kinds of the food which was given by Mrs. Pampley. Means which kinds of the things was given by Mrs. Pampley. The front of Tricky, those all kinds of the foods were eaten by Tricky instantly. Means also he was like a very greedy. What happened when Mrs. Pampley did not follow the matter of Mr. Harriet, then Mr. Harriet is telling one matter while going. I am telling you, if you will not cut down food for Tricky, then I am telling you within few days Tricky will be fallen very seriously ill, and which day Tricky will be fallen day, and that day if you will miss to me, if you will call to me for treatmenting, that day I will not come. Means like this. Some meter it was told by Mr. Harriet. After that, Mr. Harriet again getting on his car, he's gone to his hospital, and also Mrs. Pampley and Tricky both are gone to home. When 15 or 20 days it was passed, really Tricky was fallen seriously ill, and Tricky avoided to eat of any kinds of the things. Tricky only laid on the bed, and only he was whimpering, he was whining. He was not eating, not drinking, not looking, and not standing, except whining, means except whimpering. Whole time Tricky kept on hammering, but when Tricky did not start to eat any kinds of the food and did not start to drink of any kinds of the thing, just Mrs. Pampley is worried, and Mrs. Pampley started to think of that really my Tricky has been fallen seriously ill according the advice of Mr. Harriet. And now just she is calling off Mr. Harriet, and she is requesting to Mr. Harriet, let's come my home and you treatment of my Tricky. If my Tricky will be died, then really also I will be died with my Tricky. If Tricky will be done anything, then really also I am not to live on this earth. Like this matter it was told by Mrs. Pampley. When Mr. Harriet heard like that matter told by Mrs. Pampley, just Mr. Harriet is making some pretends at that moment, I will not come, I will not treatment. But when Mrs. Pemberley told such kinds of the condition in the front of Mr. Harriet, then just Mr. Harriet started to think of that. Really, if I will not treatment of Tricky, then really Tricky will be died. So just being a doctor, I should I should help him. I am just again getting on his car. Just Mr. Harriet is reached again on the door of Mrs. Pemberley, and when Mr. Harriet is gone inside of the room of Tricky, where Tricky was laid in that place, Mr. Harriet is gone. Just Mr. Harriet is looking. Tricky is not looking, not moving the body, not eating, and only he is hammering. But when he saw that, means Tricky is whimpering. Just Mr. Harriet is telling to Mrs. Pemberley, it's not possible to treatment of poor Tricky just keeping in our home. You will have to get admit of poor Tricky for hot night in my hospital. If you will get admit of poor Tricky in my hospital for 15 days, then within 15 days, our Tricky would be cured. But when Mrs. Pemberley heard of this kinds of the matter through the mouth of Mr. Harriet, just she is fitted for some while, means just she is haunted for some while. And when she came again in sense, then just Mr. Harriet is telling to Mrs. Pemberley, let's say me quickly, what are you to do? Are you to get admit in my hospital or not, or for Tricky? I have not lots of the time here for investing. Like this matter, it is told by Mr. Harriet the front of Mrs. Pemberley. Mrs. Pemberley also, she is helpless, and she is thinking that if I will keep up my Tricky in my home, then really my Tricky will not live alive. So why not I should get admit of my Tricky in the hospital of Mr. Harriet. After that, she is telling, of course you can carry off my Tricky. And just Mrs. Pemberley order of every staff, as many staffs were living in the house of Mrs. Pemberley. Just she is telling that as many things are for Tricky, all of the things should be packed. And after packing of that, just you load of that things in the car of Mr. Harriet. As it was given to directions by Mrs. Pemberley, in the same way it was done there, and all of the things was put, and after putting of that, just that was loaded in the car of Mr. Harriet, and any of the servants just picked up Tricky body on hand palms, and just Tricky is kept in the car seat. When Tricky was kept on the seat of Mr. Harriet, Mr. Harriet again he got one is in his car, and he started off his car, and just he reached on the main road as a stage. Mr. Harriet reached on the main road. Just Mrs. Pemberley from the back side cried, shouted, "Oh my heart, where are you going?" But Mr. Harriet did not care the way of back. He looked up to crying of that Mrs. Pemberley through the help of that side mirror of that car. And Mr. Harriet, when reached on the main road, just Mr. Harriet is looking the way of Tricky, and he is telling to himself that you got to free things through this richest lady, and you have eaten that, and you have been hugely fat. I will teach you, I will learn you to taking away my hospital. Like this matter, Mr. Harriet is going to think in his car, and when Mr. Harriet is reached on the door of his hospital, just he whistles just any of the staffs come out from that hospital, and just Mr. Harriet is telling of that staff, let's bring of any carpet for keeping of this tricky. I will not have to keep of this tricky inside of my hospital. I will have to keep of this tricky just on the main gate of this hospital. After that, any of the servants just went to running inside of that hospital, and also there was brought a carpet, and that carpet was spreaded just beside of the main gate, and on that carpet tricky body was kept. When tricky body was kept on that carpet, then now Mr. Harriet started to think the way for treatmenting of tricky, means how shall I treatment of tricky, like this meter. It was being thought by Mr. Harriet, and first day he did not give off any kinds of the things for eating or drinking. When it became second day, and when the sunlight started to fall on tricky bodies, tricky started to feel to very hot, and from the body of tricky it was coming to so much sweat. Now Mr. Harriet is thinking that this time I should give any little bit water for drinking of tricky, and he brought a cup of water, and he keeps just from the distance of tricky body, means he is keeping of that water cups showing of tricky, means now I am keeping of this cup of water. If you will feel too thirsty, then you come to till of this cup of water and you drink. Tricky really he was weeping continually, and when he started to feel too so much hot, and when sweat started to come out from the body of Tricky, then Tricky felt some thirsty, then now he is sliding, and sliding he went the near of that water cup, and he is wanting to drink of that water. As just as he forwarded off his mouth the way of that cup of water, just that bowl is overturned, and all of the water is poured down. When that water is poured down, then only he licked a little bit water, and in the second day, like this, little bit water is given. After that, some food also it was given of Tricky for eating, but he started to think of that, if I will give up this food for Tricky, then really Tricky will think to himself that for eating of that food, so what to do more and more anything. Just he thought, for treatmenting to very well of my Tricky, I have need dog. Actually, dog is knowing to every matter of a dog. So just he collected some rascal dog from around of his hospital, and when he collected lots of the rascal dog, he started to give the food of those rascal dog to specially, and also one bowl of food it was given by Mr. Harriet to Tricky for eating, but Tricky was unable to eat of that. When that food was given for Tricky, then all of the rascal dogs came to running, and also those all kinds of the foods were being eaten by those all rascal dogs. Only Tricky licked, only Tricky ate little bit food which was remained by those all rascal dog, and he was living like this some days. Day to day, the condition of Tricky started to improve. One day, now also he started to stand up, and also he started to make balance of the body for running, for going to anywhere. When he became to fully healthy, then one day Mrs. Pampley is calling to Mr. Harriet. Now you tell to me how is the condition of my Tricky. Mr. Harriet is telling, now Tricky has been okay, he has been recovered. Now he has lack of nutrition. As a stage, Mrs. Pempley heard of that matter, means now my Tricky is getting little bit nutrition. Then from the next day, Mrs. Pempley started to get sent crates of egg, and also brandy. These all sort of the things were being sent by Mrs. Champray. And when those all kinds of the things started to go in the hospital of Mr. Harriet, all those kinds of the things are started to take in. I mean, started to use, means all of the staff and Mr. Harriet, they all were eating of those all eggs and also brandy and all. Means no any eggs were being given by any staff of that Tricky for eating. When it became 15 days, then one day, and also actually his Miss Tricky tells it was looking like of Savvy when Tricky ran the back of any rascal dog, then also he was looking like a member of that group of dog. And every day he was running like to hunting of any hand. Like this he was running around of that hospital. But when 15 days happened, then Mrs. Pemprey called off Mr. Harriet. Now you tell to me now the condition of Tricky improved or not. Just Mr. Harriet is telling, oh, Tricky has been recovered exactly. Now you can take up for Tricky. After that, just Mrs. Pemprey is reached again in the hospital of Mr. Harriet, and as a stage, she reached on the main gate of Mr. Harriet. Just she came out to opening of her car of Chafer, and Mr. Harriet looked at now Mrs. Pemprey has reached here. Just Mrs. Pemprey is telling to Mr. Harriet, where is my Tricky? Where is my heart? Just Mr. Harriet is telling now, oh, Tricky is walking just front of my hospital. You wait here. Now I am going to call him. And just Mr. Harriet brings up the dogs, and as a stage, Mr. Harriet comes to taking of Tricky. Just Tricky recognize of his mistakes, and just he is jumped up from the lap of Mr. Harriet, and he is gone in the lap of Mrs. Pemprey. And just Tricky started to lick whole parts of the face of Mrs. Pemprey. Means both again started to love with each and other. And now Mrs. Pemprey is finding of that Tricky exactly roused, exactly healthy. Then now Mrs. Pemprey is telling that now let me go. I think this is your dream of surgery. How to say you thank you? This is your dream of surgery. Means while going, Mrs. Pemprey told such kinds of the matter of Mr. Harriet. This story is over there, but now I am going to tell to you some question and answer related from the part of this chapter. Why was Mrs. Pemprey worried about of Tricky? Mrs. Pemprey was worried about of Tricky because Mrs. Tricky was suffering from malnutrition, and he had been hugely fat. He was suffering from different kinds of the problem. On account of that, Mrs. Pemprey was worried about of Tricky. Next question that is coming in the first comprehension. Second question I am going to tell you. What does she do? Help him. Is she wise in this? Means what giving? She was helping of Tricky. She helped him giving of cod liver, chocolate, cream, cakes, eggs. These all sort of the things were being given by Mrs. Pemprey, and Tricky was eating of that. But in this there is any white, but in this it was not of any white. In third question there is telling who does I refer in this story. In this story, who is coming I? Mr. Harriet is coming in this story, which is coming here I. In this story, there is coming Mr. Harriet. Next question there is coming, how does he treat the dog? He treats the dog without giving of any medicine or injection. Just Mr. Harriet treats of the dogs just through the help of mind. And is is Mr. Harriet as rich as Tricky's mistress? Mr. Harriet was, or Mr. Harriet is not as rich as Tricky's mistress. Why did Mr. Harriet want to keep of Tricky as a permanent guest in his hospital? Mr. Harriet was wanting to keep of Tricky in his hospital for getting different kinds of the things through the help of Mrs. Pemberley. These questions has been over there, but I am telling you, my all dear student, if you have any confusion, if you have any complications, then you can share to me of that all hard nut questions, and I will give of you exactly part of that solution. This story has been over here. Again, I will visit in my next video. Till then, bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.